We seek to honor our bodies. We seek to treat it as a temple. We seek self-control. We seek to not be gluttonous. But for me, that is the ideal. But I also, one of the things I seek to do is live in the reality that I'm in. I also then did, how can I seek to honor my body well? How can I seek to treat it as a temple? How can I seek to not be overweight and obese and have all these underlying health conditions which would very much be dishonoring my body? And this medication, upon my own sense of research and, the clinicians I was able to discuss it with, the blood tests and this, that, and the other, all the research and the clinical trials I read and all that kind of stuff, it felt to me like the risk associated with that medication was worth the benefits.
Hello and welcome back to Unscripted, where we have honest conversations about God, culture and everything else in between. My name is Ennette and today I'm so excited we have a very special guest with us. Also we're joined by my lovely friend Tim, but special guest,
Hello.
Dan. Hello, welcome, thanks for being here.
You're very welcome.
So essentially guys, a little bit of a trigger warning. We are talking about quite personal issues around diet and weight, and it's around Christmas. This is a very emotive time of year, so please be mindful of where you are and how you're doing. But yeah, just to say that these are our personal opinions, and it's so exciting because we're actually talking about diet trends of 2024. The biggest one for me that popped up on my social media was Ozempic. Hence, my wonderful friend Dan, who's here. Please introduce yourself and why we get the privilege of having you here with us today.
Yeah, for sure. My name's Dan. I work as a doctor in Nottingham. And the reason I'm here is because I have a checkered history with weight.
I love this checkered.
And the health that surrounds it. I suppose to kind of cut a long story short, I have fluctuated in weight quite significantly. When I came to uni 8 years or so ago, it's probably about 94 kilos, so somewhat overweight, but not too bad. Started rowing with the university and got down to 70 kilos.
That's so impressive, just from rowing.
Yes, I mean, it was impressive, but it was also incredibly unhealthy. I should not have been 70 kilos.
Okay.
I was way too underweight, but I wanted to get into lightweight rowing.
Gotcha.
From that point on, I think I was 70 for about a day and then immediately started ballooning back up. And then with medical school finals and things like that, ended up getting up to around 110 kilos.
Wow.
Decided that I wanted to try and get that off, and had some wonderful friends and support, and I did an Ironman triathlon.
Oh my gosh.
Which was
the
very long.
discipline, the strength.
It was long, but
wow.
Discipline, I don't know. But essentially, got to the end of it and was still 110 kilos.
Oh, flip.
If anything, I think I was actually a bit heavier. I think it was like 113 or 14 kilos.
Okay.
And in that time, for about a year, I started researching Ozempic and the various other weight loss medications. And after the Ironman, decided that, I had some underlying health conditions. I had high blood pressure. My family got a history of heart disease and high cholesterol and things like that.
Yeah.
And so decided that for me, at that current point in time, it was the best thing to do to start this weight loss medication.
Yeah.
And so that was about 4.5 months ago. And I've lost 20 kilos on the medication, as well as other factors I've changed about my life, which I'm sure we can get into. But
I can't wait to get into all of the little things. Like from what you've just shared, I have like 1,001 questions. Definitely, I can see where you're saying checkered history. That's like a long journey of like fluctuating weight. Did your mental health like play a role in any of this? Did your body impact your mental health? Was it vice versa? Is it like chicken and egg?
Great question. I would say that my mental health probably is almost the complete reason why my weight has fluctuated.
Okay.
I think that food plays a significant aspect in the way I comfort myself and in the way that I feel safe, in the way that I exert control over my life. And so there were definitely moments in which, like I said, with medical school was a very tough time for me, and so that was definitely a crutch. And so, food was the best friend in that way.
I totally get this. And it's such an interesting, I guess, nuance in the whole food diet conversation, because we're all really aware of disordered eating and how that can look like really being restrictive, being anorexic or bulimic. But it could also manifest in comfort eating and overeating, which I just don't think is some part of the conversation around disordered eating that I hear a lot, which, yeah, that really caught my eye. But also you're way ahead of the trend, because I only came across Ozempic literally this year on my Instagram.
Sure.
But you said you've been researching into it for about a year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that may be kind of part of the fact that I work in the medical profession.
Fair.
So it was it was around, and so there was kind of underlying conversations about it, about what people thought of it, and its risk, its how effective it is, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Because it is relatively new in the market when it comes to weight loss. Not that new, but I suppose new in terms of being in the public eye. And so I think as and when that stuff came up, it was something I was kind of underlyingly starting to think about.
So Ennette, send us in a direction. What is the question that we are answering today?
Ooh, okay, so our wonderful colleague Sophie wrote a Connecting with Culture, CWC. They come out every Friday, and I thought her kind of little tagline around food and our culture was really interesting. So I'm just going to read out a snippet. And she's called the CWC the Jesus diet. It says cutting carbs, counting calories, taking weight loss pills, doing juice cleanses, watching why eat in a day reels. I think it would be fair to say that our society is obsessed with controlling food. And as it's like December, it's this time of year where there's actually a lot of eating and merriment and joy. It just felt like really pertinent. I mean, this is the space where we have unscripted conversations around what's happening in culture. And on my social media this year, it's for like a hot minute in July, August, Ozempic was such a hot topic trend. And I just think I was really excited by the chance to talk to someone who's actually taking it. I don't know if that's a spoiler alert, but Dan, you are actually taking Ozempic.
Yeah.
And there's actually so much misinformation. So for instance, it's not even called Ozempic in the UK. It's called, like, you're taking something different.
Sure,
There's
yeah.
like loads of different information around there. So I don't know if we're answering a question, Tim, but we're having an unscripted chat around diet.
Very on
and
brand.
Culture.
Great. So Dan, what are you actually taking at the moment?
Yeah.
How regularly? And just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I suppose the preface to that is like, I'm a medical professional, but none of this is medical advice. None of this is me offering insight into anything to do with the medication. It's kind of just my opinion on what I'm doing.
Yep.
Guys, you can't sue him, okay? This is the disclaimer. It's
Don't
happened.
do it. So for me, I'm taking a medication called Mounjaro, which is within the same kind of family, does very similar things. This one, from what I've read, is slightly more effective because it hits kind of another enzyme within the body. Ozempic is kind of what is generally used in type 2 diabetes, and also has that weight loss effect. In the UK, I believe, from a licensing point of view and from like a concentration point of view, it's called Wegovy. It's the same active ingredient called semaglutide, but it's called Wegovy. But it's kind of all very similar. So I'm on Mounjaro. I've been on it for 4.5 months. It's a weekly injection that you take, which on a broad basis helps with you feeling fuller for longer, you not having quite as much cravings in terms of kind of fatty, salty, sugary foods, and I suppose in a way that moving towards feeling a little bit more in control.
Nice.
So we are obsessed with controlling food. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the word that's just been used right now. Tim, are you obsessed with controlling your food?
I am definitely someone who resonates with what you said, Dan, about under stress, under pressure, I eat more rather than eat less. I think it tends to push people in one way or the other. I'm an eat more person. It's a distraction, basically. And similarly, I think part of my own kind of exercise regime is to try and keep that in balance. Yeah. I hope that's broadly done for good reasons and done in an integrated, healthy way. I think personally I'm still struggling to get my head around why a Christian would put themselves on these kinds of drugs. Yeah. So I'm really interested to hear from you, genuinely, because I think, what you've already revealed and talked about is that it wasn't just about doing the numbers on the calorie counting and cutting that back. There was some deeper stuff here around habit formation. Yeah. And that's what we're interested in in the unscripted conversations is how do we live well as Christians in this day and age, in our culture, for the sake of being salt and light in the world and in our relationships and having a good sense of how we treat our own bodies. There's loads wrapped up in this. So there's some kind of theological, spiritual dynamics mixed into this as well, which I'm really, really interested in. Yeah,
I think, I suppose to kind of push into a bit more of what you're saying, I think that I definitely agree that, we are called, I think we're called to honour the bodies that we have.
Yeah. So 1 Corinthians 6 is a classic line. It's probably just worth reading out, isn't it?
Conversation host, the Bible.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So 1 Corinthians 6:19. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who's in you, who you have received from God? You're not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honour God with your body.
Yeah. And so that we've all heard of that, and kind of to push into that, there's Proverbs 23 talks about do not join with those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat. And we talk about the fruits of the Spirit in Galatians, which is love, forbearance, and at the end is self-control. And so I think the framework for that is that in an ideal world, we seek to honor our bodies, we seek to treat it as a temple, we seek self-control, we seek to not be gluttonous. But for me, that is the ideal. But I also, one of the things I seek to do is live in the reality that I'm in. And for me, self-control and gluttony is something that I struggled with. And there are a number of reasons for that, and there is grace for that, and that's not that's for my therapist, not for necessarily here, but there are reasons underlying that, and there's grace for that. But there is a fundamental issue that I've had over my lifetime with regards to the way I honor my body and the way that I eat and that kind of thing. And so for me, to start on that question of why as a Christian would I go into that. I think there was almost like a lesser of two evils element there. So I can absolutely try to do things with the help of the Holy Spirit and kind of, I suppose, more organically, to use that term, without medications. But the truth of the matter is I've tried that a lot and diligently, and I've struggled. And so for me, I also then did, how can I seek to honor my body well? How can I seek to treat it as a temple? How can I seek to not be overweight and obese and have all these underlying health conditions which would very much be dishonoring my body? And this medication, upon my own sense of research and, the clinicians I was able to discuss it with, the blood tests and this, that, and the other, all the research and the clinical trials I read and all that kind of stuff, it felt to me like the risk associated with that medication was worth the benefits long term, not so much in the short term feeling looking better, but actually in the long term, if I want to be around for my children, if I want to be active, if I want to not, develop arthritis because I'm carrying too much weight, or if I don't want to have a heart attack because I've just been treating myself poorly for 30 years, that is the lesser of two evils and a crutch that I can use in order to deal with those underlying issues.
So the thing with the crutch is that you use it until your leg heals up and then you can walk again. Yep. So what's the medium, long-term game in terms of how long you might stay on the drugs? Yep. And is there a risk, I'm sure you've thought about this, that when you come off it, when you come off it, you just yo-yo back into 100%. Old habits?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest issues with these medications is that almost as soon as you come off them, most people, the vast majority, gain the weight back. And so it is absolutely not a short-term fix. And so there's all sorts of things about the idea of, there are clinical trials that are advocating for people being on it for a long, long period of time. I personally, I'm not sure about that because in the UK, it is not available on the NHS. It's legal for use through private prescription, but you pay. So that cost is hefty. It is, on average,
that cost?
It's about £200 a month. Kind of when you average it out over the amount of time you use it for. So it's very expensive. And so for me, like you said, it is a crutch, and I see it as a crutch. And so I have a weight I started at, I have a weight that I'm targeting at the end. That was probably where I was most healthiest and stayed at most stably. I am anticipating a level of weight regain. But the biggest thing for me is I am I get counselling every week, just about my life generally, but also involving this as a major part of my life. And I am regularly, in touch with the dietitian. I get regular blood tests, all in the effort to come off sustainably and create long-term habits that mean that I don't have to be on it for longer than I need to be.
Yeah. So it's sort of managing the symptoms of some underlying things that you're seeking to address while you have the headspace to do that in a healthier way. Yeah. Okay. 100%. With a hope for longer term.
Yeah.
Healthier.
I don't have £200 a month for the rest of my life.
No one has that kind of expensive
Well, that's
income.
the thing. I mean, I feel like I don't want you to take this personally, but you might, and then maybe that's, I don't know, it'd be interesting to hear your reaction. Like, isn't it? And maybe this is a bit of a caricature, so push back at me on this, but it feels like such a sad indictment of Western culture that while half the world is starving and doesn't have enough to eat, some people are now paying £200 a month for drugs to not eat.
Yeah.
It's like, how have we ended up in this position? Yeah. It's this just and your story. Thank you for sharing it so honestly. Is just symptomatic. It's like a really good illustration of this really messed up world 100%. That we're all living in.
100%, and I think that alludes to kind of what was said in what I said at the beginning. It's like we live in a broken world. And part of that is understanding the reality of the situation that I'm literally paying like almost the cost of my food shop to not eat.
Right.
That's so ironic.
Because I've developed whatever habits and thought processes and protective factors in order to that involve food. And so it's certainly a very like polarizing thought process to go on, I think.
What I'm finding interesting from like listening to your conversation is the use of the word crutch, but I've always heard it in such a negative connotation, especially I think when I talk to my non-Christian friends, sometimes they'll be like, oh, faith is just a crutch, or like it's something you lean on, when you lack that sense of self to face the world. But you are using it in such a positive way. And I like the illustration that when you break your leg, use a crutch and it helps you to get back to where you need to be and gives you that support. I think that's a really helpful way to frame it. And also, I like the nuance of this conversation because so much of what I was seeing just in my echo chamber was all around an aesthetic ideal around the weight loss, whereas you're clearly talking about something that's medical, where it's like, actually, I was extremely unhealthy, and it's like if things didn't change, things were going to be really horribly wrong for me long term. High blood pressure, heart disease, insert all sorts of other things, which is so important because I think that's just not a conversation, again, that I'm hearing in my echo chamber and online, that distinction between somebody needing it medically and then someone just wanting it for like a specific desire where they are within healthy range, but then for whatever job reason they have, they're in the public eye, they feel the need to be even smaller. And I think that's different, isn't it, slightly? That desire of like, how are you honoring your body in that way? What is it about social and peer pressure that's made you feel that?
Let me jump on that and sort of add a trifecta to that question for you. So there's the health aspect. Yep. I can't imagine you weren't thinking, I will look better and like be more comfortable at looking at myself in the mirror when I'm like 85 kilos rather than 115 kilos or whatever. Yeah. But then also you said you did like a year of thinking about it, doing the research. You were thinking about that prayerfully as well. Like you were in conversation with some good friends. So how have those three things intersected with you? The health, the aesthetic side of it, and then the kind of the theological rationale, faith side of it.
Yeah, I think that it was for me. I'm a very emotionally orientated person, and so at the beginning of that conversation, there was definitely a sense of like, well, I'm just going to take it, aren't I? Like, I'm just going to take it, and I'm going to look sick. My wife's going to love me more, and it's going to be great, and that's the end of it, and that's the long and short. And I think that the length of time was really as knowing myself, knowing that actually, in order to do something and feel like the Lord is I've involved him in this conversation, I need to take time. And so it was about trying to, like we've kind of alluded to here, go through that process of like, God gives me this body, we're supposed to treat it as a temple. There is risk to taking this medication. There are underlying risks that you can take, and there's no need to kind of necessarily list them all, but some of them are significant. And so that conversation was, do I really need to do this? when actually, you know, one thing my dad said when I was talking to him was like, Dad, you've just done an Ironman. Like, you've just gone through all of this. You've just been so disciplined in doing this. Why can't you be disciplined in doing that? And so I had to think about all of that and prayerfully consider it and kind of try my best to be as honest and vulnerable as I could be, because as I'm sure, you know, we could use scripture to kind of probably push myself either way, right?
True, so true.
And so I think it was about trying to be considerate. Firstly, of how much money we're going to be spending. Is that appropriate? Is that appropriate stewardship of the finances we've been given? Am I honouring my body well in that space? And is whatever kind of maybe somewhat underlying motivator of wanting to look better, you know, worth it? And so I think the thing for me, the clincher was that it's not like I have never tried to lose weight. It's not like I've not tried diligently to lose weight. And it's not as if this is not an underlying problem for me. And so on the balance of all of that, and after prayerfully considering it and talking about it with family and friends, it felt to me like, you know, it was about being strict. And, you know, I have parameters with my family, kind of like, you know, with regards to the crutch of like, if you're not exercising X amount, you need to come off of it because it's a waste of money. If you're still eating crap but just less of it, you need to come off of it because it's a waste of money. If you're not losing the weight at an appropriate rate, you need to come off of it because it's a waste of money. If you're not applying yourself in therapy, you're going to come off of it because it's a waste of money. And then we'll go things that way.
Yeah, that sounds like a much more holistic approach into it. And I imagine you don't get the chance to have this conversation all the time where you can lay it all out and explain it. You must have to take a bit of heat from judgy Christians.
That was literally going to be my next question. I was going to be like, how do you handle the judgy Christians? So we're like, it's just a quick fix. And so then what are you going to do? You're not building that sort of mental muscle of self-discipline and resilience. You're just relying on something to resolve an issue for you quickly.
You just have to take that. You have to take that hit.
I think that the reality is that I genuinely thought about it for a long time. And I know that the people who are, well, not everyone, but most of the people who are giving me flack don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
So
is the reality.
Yeah.
And
there's so much misinformation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, I don't know if anyone who's ever given me flack has ever read a single clinical study on Mounjaro or Ozempic or whatever. And so I think that there was a level of grace that I just needed to extend in saying, like, you're talking from your vantage point and I'm talking from mine, and I had and this is where I've come to, and you are more than welcome to not go on that journey.
I love the emotional maturity of that,
really
like the emotional healthy spirituality of that response to extend them the grace that you've got and be like, you're talking from your perspective.
It's very Romans 14 where Paul he's speaking about this dispute in the church where some people are eating only vegetables and some people are eating everything, and basically they're going at each other and they're judging each other, and he's just like, guys, you got to calm down, just like let each person make up their own mind, accept each other without passing judgment on disputable matters. Romans 14 verse 1. And I think that's kind of where Sophie lands in the CWC as well, right? She says actually we have to respect one another's choices.
So true.
And I think that posture that you're showing to others, Dan, in terms of the grace of letting them have their position, but I have my position, and I hold that confidently because I've done the work on that. But we don't have to fall out about it. Is
it's
really
so
wise.
Good.
Really,
Do you know
really
what?
good
We've
place to
tied
be.
it into such a nice, neat bow. As I wish we could talk about this forever, but I loved your vulnerability, Dan. Thank you so much for just sharing such a different and unique perspective on what's just been such a hot topic diet culture trend of 2024. It's given me so much to think about. I hope it's given you guys like a different perspective, something to think about. Please jump in the comments, let us know your thoughts. If you enjoyed any of what we spoke about, reach out to us. We've got our Connected with Culture. You can follow us on Instagram. You can like and subscribe to this channel and this video. And I think that's all the spiel. We're at the end. See you next time.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.